You know, the American people really, really need to know and to understand what their government has done in their name. Those of us who have followed this and prodded the administration along as they continue to negotiate with the Iranians were astonished when the final deal was unveiled and we found out that they were going to cut loose somewhere between $50 and $100 billion of cash to the Iranians with no sideboards, with no restrictions, with no oversight, that they could use the money any way they wanted. Now, as Senator Graham said, it is a certainty what they are going to do with this money. We had administration person after person come in and say, oh, well, things are bad in Iran. They've committed. They're going to use it for civil purposes and for building roads, et cetera. There's no doubt that they will use some of it for that. But you judge a nation by how they spend their money in good times and bad times. The Iranians, while they were broke, were able to pump millions of dollars into the Houthi rebels, into Hezbollah, into Assad and other terrorism groups, which got them the dubious distinction of being and recognized as the premier funder of terrorist activities in the world. That group, that country, that administration was then rewarded with between $50 and $100 billion to do whatever they want to with that money. We know what they did with the money. We know what their priorities were when they were broke. When they now have money, it is stunning when you sit down and put a pencil to it and see where that money is going to go and how many people are going to be injured and killed as a result of the transfer of that money to the Iranian administration. It is embarrassing what has been done, and I look forward to working with Senator Ayotte and the others here as we develop sanctions because they are going to continue to do what they have been doing.
Let me just conclude with two points. You know, you all watched the debate on the president's Iran deal. And one of the arguments by the president, by Secretary Kerry, was we do this, and this is going to help moderate their behavior, bring them in the community of nations. It was one of the arguments. Well, obviously, that's not working out very well. You know the list of things that have happened in terms of provocations from the Iranians since the signing of the nuclear deal. But I think it's important when we're sitting up here saying what Congress is going to do, it's important to recognize the role of Congress, particularly with regard to sanctions. So I had the honor of serving as one of Condoleezza Rice's Assistant Secretaries of State in the second term of the Bush administration. One of my responsibilities was going around the world economically isolating Iran. Going to our allies and essentially saying, you're a big investor in the oil and gas sector. The Congress of the United States is very concerned about that. And if you don't start looking at divesting, you're likely going to be hit with sanctions. That was effective. It was effective because we had a strong Congress and an administration that was supportive. And to give the president a little bit of credit, in the first term of the Obama administration, they continued to do that. That's what brought the Iranians to the table in the first place. And when you hear John Kerry talk about the international community putting the economic sanctions on Iran, it was the United States. It was our leadership that did that. So unless we take actions when they engage in more provocations, we're going to continue to see more. So what the Congress needs to do, and Senator Ayotte's leading the charge, is when they're taking actions against our interests, like the missile tests, we need to act. It would be great to have the administration with us. It would be great to have our Senate Democratic colleagues with us, which I think is possible, but we need to act, and we will.
Questions? Yes.
Fans down here, Kelly.
Leader McConnell has indicated that he is receptive to bringing Iran legislation to the floor if it has 67 votes. Do you anticipate that you would be near that margin, or has he indicated that he would let GOP Iran legislation come up below that level?
Well, I guess I would hope that if you look at the behavior of Iran with the ballistic missile tests, and now with the $50 to $100 billion of economic relief that they are receiving and their continued support for terrorism, which I think we are going to see more and more of with this economic relief, that my Democratic colleagues would step up and support tough sanctions on Iran to get them to change their behavior, especially on the ballistic missile program. Make no mistake, all of our top intelligence and defense officials have said that is their preferred mechanism to deliver a nuclear weapon. They don't need a ballistic missile program unless they're interested at some point, once this, as they're developing, they still have the infrastructure, they still have the ability to enrich, they still have the ability to conduct research and development, and we have an expiration date for this agreement. And so they have all the means, as Senator Graham has said, and if we don't stop them now, and so I would call on them, my Democratic colleagues, 67 votes should not be a problem when we look at what their behavior is. And so people should pick a side here. Are we going to hold them accountable, or aren't we going to hold them accountable? And what are we going to do in terms of the oversight over the $50 to $100 billion in economic relief that they're receiving?
Can you talk more about the form that the sanctions might take that you're thinking about, and have you been in discussions with the House? And it sounds like this would be something separate from the bill that came up in the House and the vote was voided.
No, this would be, so we're working collectively, as you know, before we left for the break, before they actually gave them this economic relief, I introduced legislation with everyone here. And so we're going to go back and revisit that legislation to look at which sanctions would be most effective. And they need to, we obviously, it's more effective to be multilateral, but the sanctions that were just put in unilaterally are just pathetic. They're not going to do anything. And so there are a number of sanctions we could take that are much tougher than that on economic, energy sector piece. And so we're just going to go back to the drawing board on that and make sure that the sanctions legislation that we submit has real teeth and matters to Iran as opposed to where we are now.
Can I make a point on that? Just there was this notion during the debate on the Iran deal that if they're not multilateral sanctions, they're not going to be effective against the Iranians. And that's just simply not true. There's unilateral sanctions, whether it's in the energy sector, whether it's secondary sanctions, whether it's the financial sector, that can have a very powerful impact with regard to Iran and their behavior. And that's one of the options that we'll be looking at.
Senator Graham, if I could gear this question to you, and certainly if anyone else wants to weigh in as well. But since Senator McCain brought up the need to elect the next president to deal with this, I hope you'd indulge by asking a couple 2016 questions.
Let's do that outside.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you make of Secretary Kerry's admission today about this money ending up with terror groups?
Billions.
Talk about stating the obvious. I mean, come on. I mean, this is something we've all known from the beginning. And to Senator Risch's point, they were supporting terrorism when their economy was crippled. They were choosing to put their money into guns, not butter, for their citizens before they had this economic relief. So could it be any more obvious? And to have him actually now say, oh, well, we think some of this might go to terror. Duh. I mean, really. It's been so obvious all along that if they're willing to do it when they're on their knees with their economy, they're certainly going to pump the money into terrorism when they have more economic relief.
Look, I'm on both Foreign Relations and on the Intelligence Committee. This was a matter of constant discussion while all of this was going on. There is no one who is associated with this that did not know and believe in their hearts that there was going to be a substantial amount of money flow to the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the world. They knew that at the time. It was of great concern to us at the time. To say that now, as Senator Ayotte said, is stating the obvious. Everyone knew it.
Graham and possibly Senator Risch, since you are on the Intelligence Committee, just really quickly, do you have any response to this ICIG letter that apparently special access program information was found on Hillary Clinton's server, and also any response to her explanation that it was just a New York Times story and not sensitive information?
Well, we finally have common agreement on the New York Times. That's good.
No. We've looked at that, and we're going to have more to say about it. And the chairman of the committee, I think, is going to be your source on that. Senator
Graham, any?
Senator Graham, could I ask you, I understand that Senator McConnell has Rule 14, an AUMF that you have authored. Could you describe what that AUMF is and what's your expectation for when a debate could happen?
Okay. Yesterday, I've been talking to Mitch. The President of the State of the Union called for Congress to act regarding giving him authority to fight ISIL. I agree with the President that Congress should act. And here's what I've proposed. That the authority to fight ISIL is not limited by time. It's not limited by means or location. Today, we found out that the administration has included ISIL targets in Afghanistan to be legitimate targets of the United States military. They've categorized ISIL as the same threat to the nation as al-Qaeda. That was the right move. So here's what I'm asking the President to do. Get behind my resolution. It gives you all the power you need to fight ISIL anywhere they go, using any method necessary, and as long as it takes. I hope Senator McConnell will bring the bill to the floor. The American people need to have this debate. The Congress needs to step up. And here's the question, are you all in? They're all in against us. They're moving all over the globe, and I look forward to this debate. I think it really is shameful that we haven't had this debate in the Congress, and I hope it will happen.
We have time for one more question.
Can I make one point also about this idea that I think the administration pushed at the signing the agreement that somehow this was going to be a new relationship with Iran. This would also empower the moderate forces in Iran. I hope all of you will look at the recent actions in Iran. They have a committee that vets which candidates can actually run, and they've essentially blocked almost all the moderate candidates out of running. And so actually the extreme elements in Iran are further empowered by what we see happening right now. And so I wanted to point that out because that also undercuts the narrative that somehow this agreement is going to allow us some kind of reapproachment with Iran. Not just their bad behavior that we've seen, but the moderates are being pushed out in Iran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's sort of a view of what would happen if we nominated Trump or Cruz. Here's my view.
I'm sorry, can you start over, please?
Okay. That's all right. All right. Take two. I respect Senator Dole greatly. He's making a political observation. The only thing I can say is that the only way we lose this election is to nominate somebody that cannot grow the party's vote among minorities, young women, and the coalitions we need to win. If you nominate Trump and Cruz, I think you get the same outcome. Whether it's death by being shot or poisoning, does it really matter? I don't think the outcome will be substantially different. Here's my take. Dishonest, which is Hillary Clinton in the eyes of the American people, beats crazy. I think Donald Trump's domestic and foreign policy is gibberish. I think Ted Cruz has a reputation of being ideological to a fault, and that when it comes to problem solving, he will have a very difficult time proving that he is a problem solver. When it comes to the immigration issue, he has doubled down on a line of attack that's hurt us with Hispanics. I think he would be easy prey to basically stereotype as being too rigid to be president. I think that his no exceptions for rape and incest will be a tough sell with young women. I'm proudly pro-life, but most pro-life people have an exception for rape and incest. He does not. So that entire package of Trump and Cruz, in my view, would make it possible for her, if she's the nominee, or Bernie, to win an election they should lose. And if you take those two off the table, dishonest loses to normal. So let's just pick somebody out of the phone book. If we have to, we can win this election unless we lose it. And I think Bob Dole's concerns about Ted Cruz I share. I don't know to the extent of the loss, but I just really do believe that he would be easily he'd be easily portrayed as somebody not ready to be president of the United States, not having the temperament, the judgment. And what has he done as a senator? He's best known for running down the Republican Party, not building up the country.
And Senator, as a member of the Armed Services yourself, can I ask if you have any thoughts about Sarah Palin's linking President Obama's record on veterans with her son's mental health issues that he may have incurred after he returned from service?
I think that the VA needs to be fundamentally transformed. We're trying to do that. I like Sarah Palin, but I'm not going to blame President Obama for the post-traumatic stress disorders that our soldiers may face. I just think in a bipartisan fashion, we need to deliver better services to these folks.
Senator, what do you make of Bernie Sanders' phenomenon on the other side? I mean, I'm sure you've known him for a while.
I like Bernie. I'm just astounded. There's a poll that 42% of the Democratic base considers themselves more socialist than capitalist. So in Bernie's world, the big banks are out to get you and rich people are screwing the system so you don't have a chance. In Donald Trump's world, the illegal immigrant's going to sell drugs to your kids and rape your wife. Foreigners are going to take your job. This is not exactly the America that I envision for the 21st century. I would say this, that we have an election cycle that's beyond strange. I was in it. I wish I could have done better. But we've never had a more liberal person running for president of the United States than Bernie Sanders to be a serious contender. We've had people throw their name in the hat, fringe candidates that were wildly liberal. Bernie Sanders is a fine man, but he is by far the most liberal person to ever offer themselves as a candidate in a serious fashion for the President of the United States. Donald Trump, I think, is the most unprepared person I've ever met to be commander-in-chief. And when it comes to Senator Cruz, he's exhibited behavior in his time in the Senate that make it impossible for me to believe that he could bring this country together. If the past is any indication of the future in terms of these three people, I think America would be in trouble if any of them got to be president of the United States.
But would you prefer a Cruz nomination over a Trump nomination?
Again, it's like being shot or poisoned. What does it really matter? Thank you.
Would you support Donald Trump if he's a nominee?
I can't have it both ways. I'm a Republican. I'm running as a Republican. He's doing far better in the primary than I did. I'm giving you my thoughts on national security. What he said disturbs the heck out of me. 1 minute, this is not our problem in Syria. Who cares? Let ISIL fight Assad. Nobody cares. He said, let Russia fight ISIL. Then after Paris, he wants to blow the whole place up and kill, family members of innocent people. Then you have Ted Cruz, who's gone from the libertarian view to carpet bombing the country. All I can say is that what drives my thinking about this election is I want somebody who's ready to be commander-in-chief on day one. I don't believe Hillary Clinton is going to represent a change in foreign policy we need. She's the Secretary of State of the man who got us in this mess. I think Jeb Bush and many others on our side could offer the change that we need. I just hope experience matters. It goes back to this idea, does it matter if you know anything? All I can say when it comes to foreign policy, it does matter. The last time we elected somebody without an understanding of the world was Barack Obama. When Donald Trump speaks about foreign policy, it scares the hell out of me because I think he is so disconnected from what it takes to defend this nation to the American people. You may not think experience matters because everything is so screwed up in Washington. I can tell you this, the soldiers on the battlefield, make sure you're picking somebody worthy of their sacrifice in their world. Judgment and experience and temperament matters. Bernie Sanders' foreign policy is a pacifist foreign policy. He doesn't speak about foreign policy because he can't. I hope people will understand that Bernie's a fine man. His economic policies have driven most of the debate. When it comes to foreign policy, Senator Sanders, I think, has no concept about how to defend this nation.